What do you come to a film with? What's possible knowledge that you come to a film with? What might you think about before you watch a film? Okay, so what do you come with? It might be a director that you really like, and you're like, oh, this director has a new film out. I got to go see it. What's the context on that? The context is you've seen previous work by that director. If it's a sequel, then there's this sense of oh, what's going to happen? Because the last film dropped off with sort of unresolvedness, and so you're like, oh, I got to see what happens. Okay, cool. Let me just go through a few questions that you might ask yourself. So these aren't necessarily the ones in the book, but I think chapter 2 hopefully raised some things for you, because when we look at coming to a film from an analytical perspective, it does require some different things than just sitting down and watching a movie, right? So let's talk about these. So one is, why do I want to watch this film? Did somebody recommend it? What are my expectations? Because we can definitely have different expectations, right? Do I expect this to be a great movie? Have you ever we go into movies and we're like, oh, I'm really hoping this will be wonderful, and it turns out to be a dud, or the other way around, right? So being home and not being out playing music or driving to Texas or anything over the holidays, I watched a lot of movies, and I watched a lot of holiday movies. The only problem with holiday movies is a lot of them are really terrible. They're like, some of you probably like Hallmark movies, but Hallmark movies, they tend to have um, subpar scripts, sort of B actors, predictable storylines, that kind of thing. And so there was this one movie I started watching, and I'm like, oh, Chevy Chase had a small part in it. So I thought, oh, Chevy Chase is in it. So that lent credibility to me. So I had expectations that because Chevy Chase is in it, it's going to be a decent movie. Well, it turned out to be totally predictable, typical holiday movie that set in a small town in Canada, and they need a Christmas miracle. I mean, how much more, kitschy and predictable can that be? And 30 minutes into the movie, I knew already, but I thought, well, maybe it'll get better. And so I stuck with it. And after the movie was over and the boy got the girl and all the predictable stuff, I was like, why did I just waste 2 hours of my life that I will never get back? Do I need an escape? Sometimes we watch a movie just because we just need an escape, right? Do I want to experience another time and place? You know, do I long to connect with other human beings? We can have all kinds of different motivations. By the way, I'll put the notes for these up on D2L so you can have them. Do I want to learn something? So we can have different motivations. And I find myself in the evening, I want to watch something, and I find myself asking these questions. Well, what do I need and what do I want at this moment? Do I want to watch a documentary and learn something? Do I want to be stretched? Do I want to just zone out and watch America's Funniest Videos? Like, what do I need right now? Yeah. Okay, beginning questions. So when the film starts, okay, it's good to start asking yourself a few questions. Where are we? What's the setting? What time period are we in? Who's the main character? Because sometimes it takes a little bit for a film to sort of develop and reveal who the main characters are. Sometimes it happens really quickly. Are they a protagonist or an antagonist? So a protagonist is the good guy, right? The good person who's going to save the day, or the antagonist who's like there to cause trouble. What is the core problem of the character or situation? And how quickly is that revealed? Where is this film going? I find myself more and more asking that question. I'm watching it. Okay, 5, 10, maybe 15 minutes in, I'm like, okay, they've been setting this thing up. Okay, now what's going to happen? Where are we going to go from here? As the film develops, does this appear to be a large or a small budget film? You can judge that sometimes fairly quickly, although there have been some And those tend to be associated with quality, but not necessarily. And if you've ever been to a film festival or watched some really sort of good independent films, we have access to these more than we used to, right? Because of all the streaming services. But you can watch a film, and sometimes it's a super low budget film, but it ends up to be a really quality because it started with a great script. It had great acting, it had great directing. It had the elements that make it a good film, even though it was a small budget. So, but you can kind of tell, right? What's the quality of the script? If you have a bad script, you can have wonderful directing, wonderful acting, you can have wonderful cinematography, like lighting and everything, and editing and music. You can have a great production, but if you've got a bad script, it's probably not going to be a very good movie, because that's just the basis of it all. Okay. What's the quality of the acting? What's the quality of the directing? Like, oh, what's the style of the film? We don't come without context. We always come with some kind of context. So if you've been into black and white sort of film noir, you're like, oh, this reminds me of this film or this particular style. All those experiences, all those memories that you bring influence your perceptions of that particular film. What's the overall look and feel? So we notice, and I'm hoping that I'm ruining you, as I mentioned before, that you're noticing more about these things rather than just sitting there and sort of passively saying, oh, it looks like this is set in the 1920s, and because I can tell by the cars, and I'm hoping that you're being more proactive about really noticing things. Is there an ethereal look to it? Are they using smoke to sort of give this sort of hazy appearance? Like what kind of shots are they doing? Some really novel shots, what's going on? Okay. As you're watching, you're going to have thoughtful and emotional reactions, right? So what elements do I find novel or perplexing? What does this remind me of? That's huge. That's huge, because that's part of the context that you come to a situation with. If you have experienced something that's very similar to a situation going on in a film, trust me, you're going to have a different reaction than somebody who has not had that experience, right? So, I mean, this translates to everything that we watch. So if why do you cry? Or why do you laugh in a particular scene? Probably it touches something in you that you've experienced before. Which characters do you like? Which do you dislike? And not only that, but why? Like, okay, why am I having this reaction to this person? Oh, I don't trust them all already. Well, what's that based on? Like just being aware of what you're thinking and feeling. And, these skills translate to life. This is what mindfulness is all about. It's not just that you get mad and you have a reaction and you spout off, but you analyze your reaction and you go, oh, what am I what brought that on? Why am I feeling this way? What prompted that? And what are my choices in terms of a reaction? So which characters do you like or dislike? Why? Do you identify with one or more? I would assume that each of you have your favorite films and your least favorite films, and a lot of those probably have to do with how much you identify with the characters and the story. I really like spy films. I love international espionage. I love the mystery of it, but I also love the sort of secret agent kind of genre. But when I was a kid, I watched a show called The Man from U.N.C.L.E., which was basically 007 for television. And man, I was into it. I wanted to be a spy when I grew up. And so that's a genre that I just totally dig. I identify with it. Whereas somebody else who'd never had that experience, they're like, oh, ho hum, I'd rather watch a rom-com or whatever. Okay. When we look at characters, we're analyzing them and having reactions to them just like we would anyone in person. Social learning theory is a popular theory in the social sciences, which include psychology, sociology, communication. And social learning theory says we learn by watching others, and it doesn't matter if those are real people in our lives or if they're ones that we're watching through some sort of media. So you might be watching somebody and going, oh, I don't like them at all. They're just a scumbag and blah, blah, blah. Or you might be watching somebody else and go, wow, they're so courageous and they're so in the midst of pain. They're so, oh, they're so positive. And then maybe you're like sort of incorporating those things into yourself. So what qualities do you admire or dislike? Whose side do you feel you're drawn to? It's very interesting. So writers and directors work very hard to sort of steer you in terms of your experience and what you're supposed to think and feel. There have been some situations throughout history where media ended up doing the opposite of what it was intended. So there was a television show in the 70s called All in the Family. So Carl Reiner wanted to make a show that made bigots look bad, and it was sort of a tongue-in-cheek sort of let's portray this character as so horrible everybody will hate him. But the problem was people identified with Archie Bunker. Archie Bunker was this total big mouth bigot, homophobic, sexist, like all the like negative things you could say about a character. But what happened is a lot of Americans really identified with him. And so the show was popular, not because it made fun of a certain kind of guy, but because a lot of people identified with him. So you can have unintended consequences. But you will find yourself being drawn to the side. So some people would watch All in the Family and go, oh, Archie Bunker was such a horrible person. And other people would go, oh, he's my hero. He says the things that I only think. What about the story? What questions could you ask? What are possible outcomes? And I find myself doing this more and more, like, okay, what are going to be the potential roads here that this character can take? Where's the story going? Is the outcome predictable or mysterious? We tend to like films that we sort of have to work at. And so something that is predictable is not as satisfying as something that has an element of mystery to it. So that's the problem with a lot of really bad movies, is they tell you too much and there's nothing left for you to figure out and have that satisfaction of, oh, I figured it out. Oh, and maybe you feel like you're one of the first ones to know what's going to happen. So is the outcome predictable or mysterious? Am I enjoying trying to figure out where this is going? So that Hallmarky movie that I watched over Christmas, it's like I totally knew where it was going. The boy and the girl were going to fall in love. Blah, blah, blah was going to save the day. The Christmas miracle was going to, it was like, it was like sitting there and watching paint dry because there was no intrigue at all. To what extent was the solution satisfying? In that particular film, I was not satisfied at all because I totally knew what was going to happen. Okay. In other films, you're like, oh my gosh, I didn't see that coming. Or, wow, where'd that come from? The context. When was the film made? When was the film made? So we know that films in the 70s had a particular look to them. Is a film that you go see now reminiscent of that? When was the film made? How does it fit into history? I recently watched the film 1917. So 1917 is a World War I movie. It was shot and edited in a way that it was made to look like it was one big continuous shot. That film, not only was it shot differently, if I may, but it portrayed, I'd like to write to your mother. It portrayed war in a different way than other war movies. So we've all seen a lot of war movies, right? Particularly like World War II and stuff. The way that they handled this film was different. It wasn't so much about blowing things up and people dying. It was a lot more about the emotions going on in the two main characters and the wretchedness of their situation of being cold and hungry and trying to get to where they were going and climbing over dead bodies. I mean, it was a total different experience. So if that's the only war movie you'd ever think, you'd think war was just like that, and war movies are like that. But yet you come to it with a context of, oh, I've seen other war movies. So how does this fit into that? And how does this fit into history? How does this fit into other films in the genre? And how would you rate it? Probably a lot of you like hero action movies and all the series that are coming out. And so you go and you see one and you're comparing it to all the other ones you've seen, right? And you're like rating it in your head. You're not necessarily conscious of it, though you may be. And you're like, oh, this was like the worst of this series I've seen, or we do these comparisons in our head based on what we've experienced before. How does this fit into other films done by the actors or the director? Like, oh, wow, Tom Hanks really bit one on this. I can't believe he went for that script, so we're always making these comparisons. So that's the context. Be aware of the context, that you always have a context in every situation. Lessons. What did I learn from this film? That's a good one to ask, right? Wow, I learned that you can still be a nice person in the midst of adversity. Or, we don't necessarily put these things into words, but doing analysis that's very intentional like this, man, we get so much more out of it. In what ways did it prompt me to see the world differently? How did it inform my view of humanity? In what ways did it challenge me to think or behave differently? I think they're all important. I mean, I think we sort of subconsciously go through these things. I think some of the most important questions are, where are we? Who's important? Where's this going, for sure? What does this remind me of? Why am I having this emotional reaction? I think those are very important questions to ask.